When we talk about narcissists, many of us immediately think of the image they project in public: strong, charismatic, and always overflowing with confidence. But if you look a little deeper through the lens of psychology, you will notice something interesting. What they show on the outside is often just their way of trying to fill an emptiness inside. And then, when they are alone, when no one is watching anymore, the truth begins to reveal itself. In reality, their greatest fear is not being disliked, but being unnoticed. When there is no audience, no external validation to fuel them, they start to display behaviors they have spent their entire lives trying to hide. Some of these behaviors may seem strange, even confusing, but through the perspective of psychology, we can see that they are simply the reactions of a mind desperately protecting itself from a sense of inner emptiness. In this video, we will gently walk through the 6 behaviors that narcissists often exhibit when they are alone. I share this not to make you fear them, but to help you understand them more clearly and see the truth behind their outward grandiosity. Because once you understand what is happening inside them, you will know how to set boundaries, protect your peace, and avoid getting pulled into the emotional spirals they often create. Because sometimes, just by listening and observing, we can see far more than we expect. And from that understanding, we naturally arrive at the first behavior, one of the clearest signs of what happens when a narcissist is left completely alone: the mirror ritual and self-worship. At first glance, it sounds simple, even ordinary, but from a psychological perspective, this ritual carries far more meaning than most people realize. For a narcissist, the mirror does not merely reflect their appearance, it reflects the fragile self-image they are desperately trying to hold together. When alone, they can spend an unexpectedly long time standing in front of a mirror, and it is not merely grooming or checking their outfit. This is where they enter a near trance-like state, examining every detail as though searching for something deeper, some proof that they are still enough, still worthy of being seen. Many whisper compliments to themselves, sometimes even saying them aloud, praising their beauty, intelligence, or charm. Yet at other moments, they fixate on the tiniest flaw, a blemish, a strand of hair out of place, and instantly fall into a spiral of harsh self-criticism. In those moments, the mirror becomes an arena where two selves collide. The proud, inflated self fighting to feel superior, and the insecure, wounded self insisting they are not good enough. Some narcissists take photos, record videos, and replay them repeatedly as if searching for certification of their own perfection. To outsiders, this may look superficial or even absurd, but to the narcissist, it is a serious attempt to preserve a sense of worth when no one else is there to admire them. Research in personality psychology has shown that this is a characteristic pattern. When external attention disappears, they immediately turn inward and rely on their reflection as a substitute source of validation. This reveals an essential truth. The narcissist's self-esteem is incredibly fragile. So fragile that it must be reinforced constantly, even in isolation. And the mirror, a simple inanimate object, becomes the only audience they trust, the only presence that will never challenge, reject, or abandon them. And then, just when we think the mirror ritual is the most private part of their behavior, an even deeper and more revealing pattern appears: the conflicted inner dialogue. This is a behavior almost no one ever witnesses, yet it exposes more about a narcissist's inner turmoil than anything they show externally. In a room where only they exist, they begin whispering, talking, or even arguing with the versions of themselves created in their mind. What stands out is how abruptly these conversations shift from extreme self-praise to harsh self-condemnation, as if two entirely different personalities were fighting for dominance inside them. One moment, they tell themselves they are brilliant, exceptional, unmatched. The next moment, they criticize themselves for not being good enough, not perfect enough, or not living up to their own expectations. This is not the normal self-talk most people experience. It is a clear sign that their sense of self is split into two opposing forces: the idealized image they proudly present to the world, and the insecure version they secretly despise. Some narcissists even talk about themselves in the third person, narrating their own life story in which they are both the hero and the victim. This helps them reshape reality in their favor and reinforce the belief that they are uniquely misunderstood. Yet ironically, these very monologues reveal the truth they fear most. They do not truly know who they are. They swing rapidly between inflated confidence and deep self-doubt, unable to settle into a stable sense of identity. Psychology refers to this phenomenon as inner ego conflict, a constant tug-of-war between the desire to feel superior and the fear of being exposed. The speed with which they shift between self-admiration and self-disgust is a powerful indicator of emotional instability. And this is often the most chilling part. While they appear strong and composed in front of others, in private, they cannot even tolerate their own company. Yet, when we look beyond the surface, we begin to see another pattern becoming increasingly prominent in the digital age: social media addiction and the obsession with being noticed. For a narcissist, social media is not just a platform, it is a stage, a second mirror that reflects back the sense of importance they believe they possess. And especially when they are alone, they cling to that screen as if it were the only thing capable of reassuring them that they still matter. In their solitary moments, they scroll endlessly, revisiting old posts, checking every like, every comment, every follower gained or lost. Numbers that might seem trivial to most people carry tremendous emotional weight for them. Each like feels like nourishment for their ego. Each comment is proof that they are still seen. Each unfollow triggers panic, fear, or even rage. Psychology refers to this as a compulsive validation cycle, where a person's self-worth becomes tightly bound to external feedback. And the more their attention decreases, the more desperately they scroll, hoping to find something that confirms they have not been forgotten. But ironically, the more they seek, the more empty they feel, because digital interactions can never fill the real fear within. The fear that without an audience, they cease to exist in the eyes of the world. That is why, in their loneliness, the phone becomes their sanctuary, the only place where they can momentarily recreate the illusion that they still have significance. In reality, this obsessive checking is a sign of a deeply dependent ego. It reveals that they cannot generate inner value for themselves. Instead, they rely entirely on how others respond to them, and this dependency traps them in a draining loop. The more they crave recognition, the more devastated they feel when it does not come, pushing them right back into scrolling, checking, waiting, in a cycle with no end. But what few people realize is that when their need for validation is unmet, narcissists drift into an entirely different psychological territory: revenge fantasies and a toxic sense of superiority. This is one of the darkest, least visible corners of their inner world because it takes place entirely in silence, deep within the layers of thoughts they would never share. For them, every insult, every criticism, every moment of doubt becomes fuel that keeps an internal fire burning for years. When alone, they replay scenes where they felt humiliated or exposed. Yet they don't merely remember, they reconstruct the whole narrative, embellish it, intensify it, and eventually build elaborate payback scenarios like a private movie playing in their mind. In these imagined scripts, they are always the winner, the one who rises above, the one who makes others regret ever crossing them. These fantasies rarely translate into real-life action, but they offer a potent, toxic thrill, the illusion of power, control, and emotional dominance. Psychology identifies this as an ego restoration mechanism through imagination, a distorted way of patching up narcissistic injury. This also explains why they can hold grudges for exceptionally long periods. In their mind, the revenge story never ends. It gets replayed, refined, and nourished each time they feel threatened or insecure. In these moments, they become judge, victim, and hero all at once, roles crafted to protect their fragile self-image. What makes this behavior particularly disturbing is that imagination has no moral boundaries. They can picture things they would never dare to do in real life, and even the act of imagining is enough to soothe them. Behind the polished exterior, the charm, the intelligence, the social finesse lies a mind that secretly savors the idea of someone else's downfall. Because in that private world, another person's suffering becomes the temporary antidote to their own feelings of inadequacy. For a brief moment, they feel taller, stronger, and superior again. And as we go even deeper, we reach a level few people ever witness, the level of silent self-destruction, where the narcissist no longer battles the world but collapses under the weight of their own inner chaos. Ironically, the very individuals who appear fearless, invincible, and endlessly confident in public are often the ones who crumble the fastest when there is no audience left to hold them together. In private, once the mask has fallen, many narcissists turn to extreme behaviors as a way to temporarily shut off the storm inside. Alcohol, drugs, reckless sex, compulsive spending, dangerous thrill-seeking, all used for a single purpose: numbing emotional pain. Because they cannot tolerate the inner voice, screaming that they are not good enough, not wanted, not truly valuable, or worse, unlovable, unless they perform. The painful truth is this: their self-destruction is not pleasure-seeking, it is survival, a distorted strategy to suppress the collapse happening within. Psychology describes this as emotional regulation through self-harm, meaning that when they cannot control their pain, they control something else, even if that something is their own body, their clarity, or their future. Destroying themselves gives them a fleeting illusion of mastery. At least this is still mine to control. Healthy individuals seek support, therapy, or self-care during emotional crises. But narcissists who neither trust nor rely on anyone choose the fastest, most dangerous route, throwing themselves toward the edge just to quiet the noise for a moment. And here lies the most haunting truth: they spend a lifetime hiding. Beneath the grandiosity lives a self so fragile that they must break themselves to avoid feeling broken. This is the darkest face of narcissism, not when they hurt others, but when they quietly, methodically, and desperately turn the blade inward. And finally, at the deepest level, when every mask has fallen and nothing is left to distract them from themselves, the narcissist turns to a ritual that few people ever suspect: the ceremony of self-worship and the obsessive control of their physical space. This is not merely cleaning or organizing. It is an urgent attempt to build a tiny world that bends to their will, a substitute for the sense of power they can no longer maintain internally. In these isolated moments, narcissists may become fixated on the smallest details, adjusting the corner of a table, lining up bottles by size, folding and refolding a shirt, wiping an already spotless surface. To most people, it might look like perfectionism, but to them, it is a ritual of ego restoration, a way to reassure themselves that at least something still obeys me, especially when the outside world no longer revolves around them. Ironically, this need for control does not stop at objects. Some narcissists vent their rage on possessions, slamming doors, breaking items, throwing objects as if punishing an invisible enemy. Others mutter or speak aloud to the empty room, scolding, commanding, or blaming, as though the space itself is the only witness to a pain they cannot show publicly. Psychology describes this as displaced aggression when unexpressed fear, shame, or anger cannot be directed outward, so it spills onto anything available. Beneath these seemingly irrational behaviors lies a profound truth. When they cannot control people, they must control space to prove they still exist. And in those moments, the tragedy of narcissism reveals itself completely. A person who has lost the ability to connect in authentic ways, reduced to dominating furniture and empty corners just to reassure themselves that they still matter. The more they fear being forgotten, the more they try to impose their presence on the tiniest aspects of their environment. Yet the more they control, the more the emptiness inside them grows a void no object and no ritual can ever fill. And when everything is placed side by side, these 6 behaviors form a complete picture of the narcissist's inner world, a world they spend their entire lives trying to hide. It is a place of chaos, cluttered with illusions and inflated self-importance, intertwined with the fear of being forgotten, a simmering anger, and a profound emptiness they never allow anyone to witness. These behaviors are not random quirks. They are the consequences of many years of emotional wounds, insecurity, and the relentless obsession with maintaining a perfect version of themselves that they can never truly become. Psychology shows that narcissists experience the highest level of inner turmoil when they are alone, because there is no one left to reflect back the image they want to see. It is in those moments that their most distorted and incomprehensible behaviors emerge as a form of survival. On the outside, they appear strong, proud, and in control. But inside, they are struggling to coexist with a fragile self that even they are afraid to face. Understanding this is not about excusing them, but about seeing the truth clearly so we know how to protect ourselves. Their toxicity does not come only from malice, but from an inner world full of unhealed wounds. And if we stand too close to someone who is breaking from the inside, we risk being pulled into their emotional storm as well. So if you have a connection with a narcissistic person, whether in love, family, or work, remember this. First, boundaries are the shield that protects your peace. Second, when you feel drained or confused, do not hesitate to seek professional support. Third, you deserve respect, peace, and freedom, and you have the right to step away from any pattern that harms your emotional well-being. Awareness is the first step toward liberation. When you understand what is truly happening behind the narcissist's mask, you not only see them clearly, you also see the path you need to take to protect your worth and your heart.